Hello. Hi. So I'm Rory, and I'm the co-founder of InChat. My other co-founder, Hector, is with us today. He's at the back. For any of you here today that wants to talk to us afterwards, we're both here. So InChat is a consultancy. We use conversational technologies, conversational AI, primarily to gather qualitative feedback from customers about their experiences or user experiences. This may be of products, or it might be in the field, people experiencing a festival space or an event such as this one. The main thing that we are inspired by is ethnography. So ethnography is this practice of going out into the field and observing what people are doing, and then taking notes and using that to inform either kind of industrial design, or it can be from a kind of sociological perspective. So we're inspired by this notion of that chatbots can sort of become ethnographers. And in the course of our client work and over time, we've developed a bit of a philosophy and a methodology. And one of the main methodologies that we use actually is called co-design, which I'm going to talk about. Aside from that, one thing we highly value design and putting more importance on designing the right kind of intervention over kind of engineering. So that's why we talk about what we like to say strategic AI and smart design. So strategically inserting the heavy or deep tech once we've figured out the design. So co-design is basically about designing with, not for, right? So a typical client project for us will look like a very early stage running a workshop where we get everybody who's involved with with the project, even tangentially involved. It might be a client partner, perhaps even better is to try and get some end users that are the target of any kind of intervention, get them in a room and do some creative brainstorming. We will teach them about conversational technologies, the potential. We'll maybe brainstorm some use cases of how they can use conversational technologies to solve their problems. And one of the key things that we do is get people prototyping dialogues, right? So we give it, this is just done on pen and paper. So it's sort of paper prototyping exercise. And what we get out of that is the key kind of questions or the key provocations that we need to build into whatever is that we will go on and to build in a certain use case. So I'll skip through this. What I'll do is talk about a few client projects and some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. Some of the lessons here aren't particular to any one project. It's just helps kind of illustrate what we're talking about. So this project I wasn't directly involved with, but my co-founder was. And this was the Edinburgh City Council Public Art Project. So what we were looking at here was the landscape of public art policy in Edinburgh. So if you want to put up a statue in public space, how does somebody go about that? What is the planning mechanism what does the planning mechanism look like? And at the moment, there's no public art officer in the city. So we were gathering, we were doing quite a lot of research that involved events and workshops that were away from a bot intervention. So we had interviews, we had roundtable discussions with heads of galleries, Scottish artists, planning and policy people in the council. And eventually we built a chatbot that asked these participants to walk around the city and look at a contentious work of art, where they would place a new work of art, and just sort of discuss their opinions on the work of art in the city. So they were faced with their opinions out in the outside world. So this is one of our kind of earlier projects where we were sort of still developing our methodologies. One of the things we realized that we had to do was manage misconceptions about chatbots. Like it's sort of seen as this thing that's for FAQs, or it's for booking flights, right? It's not for helping in a research project or something like that. So there was a little bit of confusion about how we were going to deploy our intervention. So one thing we had to do was kind of show people kind of all kinds of use cases where people have used chatbots before the kind of to kind of sort of break down those misconceptions and the barriers before people would sort of really engage in a dialogue or prototyping process. So another project I'd like to highlight was the I've got the wrong image there. Sorry about that. The Fringe Festival project. So here in Edinburgh, there's the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, massive international arts festival, and there are so many shows that people get overwhelmed by the amount of choice that they are. And so the Festival Society decided we've got this problem where people don't know what to go see and they're overwhelmed. Is there a way that we can maybe change our listings or the way that we connect artists and audiences, and so that they are more confident about the decisions they make? So in this, our original proposal was to have a chatbot that would help audiences find shows through conversation. But it actually turned out we needed to talk to artists first about how they come up with the shows and how they market them and how they talk about them, to sort of, as a first sort of step towards researching how that eventual audience-facing chatbot should be built. In this case, we brought in, in this case, we ended up bringing partners, some artists, client, and also in this case, the client's partner organization, but also their consultancies and agencies that are working with them. And in this case, as they were sort of new to co-design, we noticed that there was a little bit of hesitancy around, or a sort of a reservation. And we feel that this was I think somebody earlier today talked about this, and they were saying that if you're bringing or building in a new system, I think it was in the context of support. If you're bringing in a chatbot system into an existing kind of support framework where there's already people working on it, those people might feel a little bit threatened that you're replacing and not that you're sort of replacing them, or maybe they're not sure what it is that you're attempting to do. So this is where it was kind of important to outline that, look, actually we're coming here, our approach here is to be an ally, and whatever we build, involving you in the co-design processes so that you're involved in the design, you're involved in the decisions, and therefore whatever we do should have some value to you too. We noticed, so in this case, we had a scenario where we had the kind of main point of contact who left the organization, and we had to pick up with somebody else. Now, although we found this a little bit difficult at the time in this project, actually, we'd involved so many people from the beginning that it was actually not that difficult to find someone who knew what we were talking and knew what we were doing. It wasn't like one person siloed off in the organization, that then this was just sort of a project lost down a black hole. So another project we've been working on is Juno. This isn't complete yet, but this is basically a kind of chatbot guide to Jupiter Artland, which is a sculpture park outside Edinburgh. And the idea with Juno is that you wander the sculpture park, and you can discuss with Juno what the work of art, but it will ask you questions about the work of art. It's not so much a kind of information delivery type chatbot experience. Anyway, regardless, in this project, we noticed that, and perhaps with some other clients, they're very happy to hear, you're going to do code design, you're going to work with us, we're going to get to work on it too. It sounds very nice, right? It's a nice, I don't want to say buzzword, but they like this approach. I think perhaps, though, what clients have to be prepared for in co-design is the investment of time that it requires. Because if you're really sticking to a co-design process, you're involving them with a lot of decisions. You're not saying, you're not being given a brief and then you're going to go away for 6 months, build something, and then come back. The expectation should be that, or the process requires that you have kind of regular and quite deep back and forward with your client, right? So they do, if you are going to do co-design, you really have to stress that, like, okay, we'll need a point of contact, and they will be setting aside significant time. An interesting thing we found with some of our clients, I mean, this applies across, is both high and low expectations of conversational technology. Some people kind of think it's like, oh, the bot won't be able to do this, so there's no point in us trying to plan out a system like this. Or it might be the other end of the spectrum where they're like, yeah, this is going to be like a sci-fi film, and we're going to be able to do this and that, and you're like, oh my God. I mean, that's a lot scarier to deal with a client. So we have to kind of put the brakes on and set expectations. I guess this is nothing necessarily to do with co-design, but it's just this kind of education piece that you might need to do. Another thing we've noticed in general, this was maybe a surprise to us, because in this use case was a lot more focused on content. And we just learned that don't underestimate the amount of work content needed for content creation, right? There's loads of content out there, but translating, I don't know, books, websites into a conversational format, that actually takes a hell of a lot of work. So don't underestimate that. Another project we did was a more classic sort of research basis that we're used to, was Alfred the Owl. So what you see here is us. We've prototyped a dialogue, and we've gone out into the context, which is the Meadows Park here in Edinburgh. And what Alfred the Owl does is there's a kind of QR code, and you go and you speak to Alfred, and Alfred asks you about your park usage and how you've been enjoying the park and what you do in the park and all this kind of thing to feed into the improvement of the environment here in Edinburgh. So in this one, we noticed that because a lot of our they were quite a techie group, and so they were really interested in, can the bot do this? Can the bot do that? Can it not do? Can it do this? Can it do that? And then they were sort of very overly focused on the technical capabilities, and it sort of constrained the thinking and the imagination of what the intervention could be. So we decided to remove that constraint entirely and say, what would you do if you had a magic wand, right? So you want to go be free, be creative, right? This is, I know that was a bit, maybe contradicting myself, because I was saying I'm terrified of people coming at me with a kind of sci-fi scenario, and I'm saying, hey, go ahead, have a sci-fi scenario. But this has sometimes helped reveal some of the better ideas. And then at the end of your kind of creative session, you can reestablish and pull people back to earth and say, well, that's a great idea. There's a good nugget in there. Let's see where that can go. But we're going to have to maybe cut out the whole kind of Asimov element in there. Another thing to notice in a kind of co-design process, everybody's opinion is equal. We try not to have this thing where the highest paid opinion, the hippo, comes in and decides everything. It's all very flat structure. But the problem that can end up leaving you with is where there's no champion or leader, particularly on the client side, who will pick up and drive things along, get other people going, whip them to go and get that piece of content that they said they would deliver to you, etc. So I would strongly advise that regardless of any project, that you would probably designate someone who can really help move that process along and state explicitly, okay, you're the, I guess you get this in agile project management methodology that you have these sort of set roles and whatnot. Don't neglect that in co-design either, that when you go away, you need to be the person that helps move the process along from your side. We have a bunch of takeaways here. It's probably a bit too small. I don't want to rattle them all off. I'll leave them. You can get the slides from us, download it, and come and talk to us. We're both here. That's our contact. I don't know how much time we've got left, but I'm happy to take field questions, and or hear thoughts if there's some time.